Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Hello folks, welcome to this short, what's going to be a couple 3-day build. It's going to be a quickie, but it's going to make a nice change of pace from what we've been doing lately. Anybody who knows me will tell you that Lou doesn't build cars. I just don't build cars. There are plenty of people who build cars. It's just not my bag, baby. I don't build cars ever, except when I do. And the only cars I will build when I do build a car are cars like these. Custom cars. Odd cars. I'm not going to be building either of these this week, but cars that are either the Tom Daniels custom cars, or more importantly, the big Ed Roth, Big Daddy Ed Roth. I'm trying to stumble and get all my words out. The Ed Roth cars. I really just love the customness of them. The fact that the body styles are so unique. But those are the cars I build when I build cars. I would say that Big Daddy, outside of Mad Magazine, Big Daddy Roth probably had the biggest influence on me as a young cartoonist growing up, as far as my style and things I like to do. All comes down to this guy, the Rat Fink. This is an Ed Roth original of the Rat Fink, and Rat Fink was a presence in my early life. Older friends who were working on their cars would usually have a Rat Fink up in, poster stuck up in their garage. So much so that when I was still working for a living, when I was still working for the state, back in 2007, I was tasked with doing the mascot for the North Carolina Mountain State Fair, and the theme that year, which was given to me, was Full Throttle Fun. Well, I went to, my brain went to, the big weirdos with the big hands and on the gear shift knob and all that kind of stuff. My first designs were not met with shall we say, thunderous approval, because they thought they understood what I was doing. Don't get me wrong, but it was not exactly the family fare that they were looking for. It came down to this. I'll move the camera here in a second. Well, no, I'll just show you. This is one of the few remaining t-shirts from that. There's your Full Throttle Fun. The goat was their mascot for that year, and you can see that's about as Big Daddy as they were allowing me to get. I had the grinning teeth, I had the big eyes, and the hand on the steering wheel, and the other hand on the big shift knob. But that was about as Big Daddy as they were going to let me get. No bulging, bloodshot eyes, no tongue hanging out the side, no flies flying around it. They weren't going for that. But that brings us to this week's quick build, and it's going to be this guy. It's going to be the Rat Fink. This is a 3D printed kit, and as anybody who ever did, the first rule of 3D. Now we all know that 3D printing is still in its infancy, pretty much. It's in its first struggling years, but I'm ready to write the first rule. The first rule of 3D printing is you never print just one. You're going to print a couple. This was printed for a buddy of mine who brought me the file, who does not have a printer, said, "Can you print this for me?" And I said, "Sure. I'm going to make one for myself. I hope you don't mind." No problem with that. Plus the fact, when you're printing, it's still not an exact science, and you double up on your parts, because if one has a failure, the more copies of a thing you print on the build plate, chances are, one of them is going to come out okay. And that was the case. Because some of them took so long to print, I wanted to have insurance and double up. But here you go. I'm going to show you the parts that we've got. The nice thing about the Rat Fink is any bubbles or scrapes or knocks on the surface of the 3D printed part, it's Rat Fink. You make a wart out of it, or you make a divot out of it. It's no big deal. It's not make or break. The only thing you want to be nice and smooth is his belly, and I've got that. I smoothed that down and sanded it. But let me show you the parts that we're going to be dealing with this week. Okay, here are the parts of the Rat Fink. Now, As I said, any other time you print something, it would have a big divot in it like that, you would throw that piece out or try to work about making it a filling it in with some putty or something. But that's not necessary on this kit because it's Rat Fink. Any of these little warts that might look like they are improperly printed, well, you know it's Rat Fink. So the whole thing kind of sits like this. I'm trying to do this with one hand. It's not easy. Let me do something like there. Oh, there you go. See? There you go. Like that. And like that. And that's how it sits. Like that. The face, these are the bulging red eyes. These are the only pieces I printed in white. I printed the nose in white as well. Sorry. I printed these in white because those are the whites of his eyes, and they will get glued in something like that and painted with bloodshot strips and all kinds of red eye on it. It took me a while to figure out why the arms didn't look right, and then I remembered that they are crossed behind his back. That's why they look weird. You know, the shoulder joint is here, and then the hand seems like it's turned around the wrong way. It's because they are joined in the back. Now, the only thing that kind of strikes me as odd is that we don't have a big old tongue hanging out, but in this pose, the big old tongue doesn't hang out. It is basically this pose here, and you can see no tongue. He sees the old-fashioned keys, we say no tongue, but it goes together something like that. It's going to make a fun little desktop piece. Again, here is the inside of the mouth. That's going to be painted all black and left alone because you're never going to see it. It's one of those instances where they could have printed this all in one piece and you never would have known the difference. But I'm holding the camera still, but let me try to put this together. Hold on. Okay, there's this is how it goes together. There's the joint in the side. Now this joint will need to be puttied. And it looks like that. The teeth kind of mesh together. And then this is all the three pieces of the head. This area right here will have to be puttied and sanded and smoothed together. And then the whole thing fits into the body like that. So we'll be able to paint the head completely out separate from the body. The arms will, the hands do interlock quite nicely. Let's see. Turn them around like this so you can see what's going on. The flaws in the print on the back of the RF are hidden by the hands, so that's not really an issue. But even so far down as this intricate bit of hair printing, and that printed with one support basically right here, printed upside down, just printed like that, beautiful. And then it goes in like that on his noggin, the nose, and then the bug eyes. He looks something like that. Well, to start off, everything here has had a good filler primer coat on it, except for the whites of his eyes and his nose. And now all we need to do is give it a start painting on it, really. I'm going to paint the insides of the mouth black. No great shakes there. Not going to try to put any amounts of color in here. We'll be doing yellow teeth and the pink gums, but the inside of the mouth, there's no reason to go wild on that. And I think the first thing I'd like to do is maybe give this body, since it's such a separate thing by itself, just give that a, see this ugliness back here, that's in the printing of it, and that's why this piece I kept, and I printed a better one for my buddy. But I'm going to paint some, put some red on that. Good morning, folks. Welcome back. It's day 2 on the Rat Fink. It's a very wet and soggy day. We've got Tropical Storm Elsa blowing through the area today, which makes me glad that yesterday I took the chance, even though all the commercials say you're not to do it. I went up on the roof and cleaned the gutters out, so I was anticipating a lot of rain today, and if I could get the gutters cleaned out in addition, in advance of the rain, then everything would be in a much better shape. Also, I redid or added to or fixed the caulking and flashing around the chimney. There were some places where the flashing had popped up and it was letting rainwater in, and I was noticing some staining on my living room ceiling, so that meant that there was a leak coming through. So I went up and added some more, smacked the flashing back down into place and put some more nails into it, and used the old Flex Seal spray around it, see how good that stuff actually is. But that's neither here nor there. That's all storm preparation. Hopefully that means my house will stay dry for a little bit longer. But today we are back at the Rat Fink, and my biggest trap so far that I've noticed from working on this thing is I need to dumb myself down, if that's the right word. I'm putting too many shades and subtleties into this thing that is essentially a cartoon character. It should be flat colors. It should be, bright, garish things. It shouldn't be, like trying to paint a realistic dinosaur or something like that. So I just need to watch what I'm doing and make sure that I am not applying a finish that would not be subject appropriate. So I've got the green, I've got the bright green out. Now I've, in the last time since you saw it, I've put the head together, the three pieces that make up the head. And I've put some epoxy sculpt into the joint and the seams, and have in fact sculpted it. So to hide all of that, I've got the body has had a chance to dry since yesterday. So the two major parts, when you look at it like that, are starting to look pretty good. I'm going to put this, the body aside, get that out of the way, keep it safe, and I'm going to start doing the green highlight pass on the skin. Alrighty, just continuing work with the Rat Fink. I've done some hand painting here. I'm working on the bulging eyes. I'll do some little red veining in there yet. I painted the fingernails and the toenails, but I'm not wild about that color. I think I'm going to end up toning that down. Painting in the teeth and the gums. The original is the teeth are a little bit yellower than that. That, even though it's a cartoon and I'm trying to use cartoon colors, that was just a little too stark for me. So I went back with more of a bone color. You can kind of see where we're going once those pupils are painted black. There's your profile. There's one more pass that needs to be done on the skin, and that's going to be a yellow pass that's going to bring up some of the high spots and the bumps there with the yellow, but I won't let that green dry up very well. I need to also paint into details on the hair. Again, fingernails are a little bit too bright. I kind of like the toenails better, but even those are a little bit too much. I'll tone those back. And the body has got a coat of satin clear on it. Let me see if I can grab that. Here's the body with the satin coat on it. The red and green are looking good against each other, and that's the important thing. So by the time you put the body on the head, or the head on the body, it looks like that. That's probably your best pose right there, your best view. The R and the F, of course, are going to be painted yellow, but they're still masked off right now until I am 100% happy with the reds, which I mostly am. There's not a lot to do on those. And then, of course, there's the tail. So yeah, it's coming along nicely for being 2 days on a 3-day project. I think we're doing pretty good. I just don't want to rush through a bunch of stuff here. My biggest fault is in not letting things dry thoroughly before I go to the next step. Alrighty, I've just gone through and done some yellow highlighting on the warts and the edges of the ears to try to get. I know this is like a lit highlight, but I went ahead and painted that in as a color. And other than not being able to do all of the individual black hairs, like on the arms that aren't sculpted in, I think we're looking pretty good for the rest of it. Worked on the eyeballs here a bit. Those are going to be the telling feature. I can give you that much right away. It's like, if it's all in the eyes, whether it's the Mona Lisa or the Rat Fink, it is all in the eyes. If you don't get those right, the rest of it falls apart. And the feet are looking kind of ghoulish. What I've done is I've gone in and highlight or sprayed the yellow around the raised warts, and when this is all dry after lunch, I'll come back and I think I'll just do a very sharp highlight of a dot of yellow just on the top of those, to make them more of a hard-edged thing rather than just this spray. I have removed the masking tape over the RFs on the body, and I am pondering the appropriate color. Now, it's supposed to be a yellow, but I don't know whether I want to go with an actual yellow or try to do some sort of gold, not a high gloss metallic gold, but some sort of goldish color. There's also a reverse one on the back. This has a gradient going from yellow down to orange. I don't think I want to try that. I think I do want to go for a solid color, but I just haven't quite figured out what treatment I'm going to give it. I should put a lighter color behind it so that whatever color I put on top of it, be it yellow or gold, will stand out better. So I'm thinking maybe a tan primer underneath it. Okay, so I decided to make it difficult for myself after all. I went ahead and taped off the RF, and I sprayed in the gradient going from yellow into orange, into fluorescent orange at the bottom. And I think I probably need to do a light yellow at the top. But figured since I had it masked off, why not? Add some extra color. And I've gone back to something a little bit more natural on the teeth. First of all, I went in and made the gums redder. They were too realistically colored pink before. I think that looks a little bit better. And then I went with a brown candy corn almost. And then I will do a dry brush over top of that with the ivory color. A little bit, something that's a little bit less than the yellow, because I've got so much else yellow on. I've got, with all the yellow spots and all that, there's already so much yellow that I figured I would go ahead and take some of the yellow away from the teeth color. But I think it's coming along quite nicely. This will work like that. Let's see, I don't know whether you saw me putting the veins in the eyeballs. So when it gives you your well-worn pop of color here. I might put a wash over that white because gauged on the picture that I've got, those eyes are still too white and need to be a little bit more bloodshot, but we'll see. And then pop the nose on here. The nose actually adds a whole lot of balance to the rest of the face that you don't get just by seeing it by itself. That really, between that and the eyes, are what add the extra bit of pop and dimension to that face. I think the airbrushed areas of yellow, I think those faded yellow spots are a little too iffy. I may go back and tighten those up, re-green it a little bit, and then go back in and just with a highlight, very definite color of yellow. But I'm looking, again, you know, it's a bit of an airbrushed yellow around it, but I'm kind of liking these spots that are just on the high bits and not as pervasive as all of this yellow is that I've got going on. So that might get re-yellowed. I'll have to see how I feel about that. Okay, and with all the masking removed, you're able to see the nice RF. Now, there's one last question, and since it's not molded into the 3D file, I'm wondering about adding this outline, the blue outline that runs all the way around the RF, and it actually looks like it goes inside some of these bevels, and I'm curious as to whether I should try that or not. It would give me the chance to neaten up the edge between the red paint and the RF paint, but it would take an amazingly steady hand to do, and I don't know if that's something I want to try today or not. But we're going to let this dry and come back to it a little bit later. Good morning, welcome back. It's Friday. It's the last work day of the week, and it'll be the last day on the Rat Fink. Before I start putting everything together, there's one last detail I want to take care of, and I was basically trying it out off camera to even see if it was practical, and that is to paint the outline around the RF. There's an outline that is in blue that goes around the RFs, and I don't think I want to try to paint in the tops of the bevels of the lettering. I think painting around the perimeter will be enough, but I wanted to try it out on the back before I tried it out or did it on the front to see if it was feasible. And yes, I can fees it, so it is feasible. I just need to paint I'm just doing this freehand, just painting this outline around the lettering, and then we'll be able to start epoxying this together. This morning I went over most everything with a Kelly Green Comart wash to kind of sink into the wrinkles and such, and I think that looks good. And I'm really to the point where I don't want to do any more work on it until it's all put together, so that I can see exactly what is going to be visible and what isn't, what needs to be taken care of, that sort of thing. But as a last step, let me go ahead and paint in the and of course the secret to this is having a good brush and having paint that's a good consistency, and not having too much coffee so that your nerves are not jangling. And Tamiya is not the easiest paint to work with right out of the jar. If you're not careful, it wants to pull itself back up off of itself, so you just go in. Sorry, if I was doing this on camera, you might actually appreciate it. I'm just doing a very small, thin, consistent line. Luckily, the lettering is raised enough that I get a nice edge. And just going to go around the edge of the lettering. Back in a minute. Okay, I just took a few minutes and did the blue outline around here, which served two purposes. A, it defines the shape a little bit better, particularly against the red of the jumper, but also it allowed me to cover up any ragged paint between the two where I had some masking that might have been a little off. So I've decided I do not want to do, I'm not going to try to do the bevels. I'm not going to try to do those bevel lines because they're visible enough and it's implied, and I really, no. I think that might be pushing my luck to do that. So now we're to the point where we just need to mix up some epoxy, the 5-minute kind. This stuff here. Mix up some epoxy. Move the camera back so you can see what's going on. And then once it's all put together, I'll see what touching up needs to get done after that point. But yeah, we're ready to start gluing, I think. Okay, I've got the feet and the tail glued in. Basically, I have upended the body, put some 5-minute epoxy into the leg holes and the tail hole, sat the whole thing back down on some glass to make sure that it was sitting nice and flat. And we're going to let those joints cure up for, 20 minutes, half an hour. Next step will be the arms, and then the head, and then we'll be done. Okay, I'm ready to put the arms in now, and the tricky thing about them is that the hands interlock like this, but you can't really do that and then position it on the Rat Fink. You kind of have to interlock them and glue them as one motion. So what I'd like to do at this point is mix up some epoxy, get it ready in the shoulders, and then kind of set everything in together and hold it. A little rubber band bondage to keep them in place. Keep the arms in, and we'll let that set for the requisite 15 minutes. I popped the nose on the end of his beak, and let me see the next. Well, no, I can put in this little shock of hair that goes in there like that. But I think I want to take one last pass at the hair that's on the inside of his ears. And to do that, I need to be able to get in behind where that would go. So I'm going to get out the black paint and do one more pass on the hair. Okay, so we're down to the last details, and the important one is putting the eyeballs in. Now I want to do this while the head is still unattached, so that I can do some positioning and playing and tweaking and moving, which is easier to do now than it would be before we put it on the head. And then the last thing to do is give the whole thing a good dull coat, a good flat coat. And then after it's flat coated, I'll come back either with the Vallejo clear and with a brush gloss, or the Tamiya gloss. I haven't figured out exactly which one. I might even try some clear epoxy just to give a glossy finish over where it needs to be, like on the teeth and gums, and the eyeballs need to be glossy. In the nose, I want to have a wet nose on that, but everything else can stand to be flat. So we'll discuss that when we get to it. But I think we're going to do this with the CA rather than the epoxy on that, because once these are in, they could go ahead and dry up pretty quickly. Now I want to make sure that the veins that I've got painted on the eyeballs are the nice ones are up. This has got like a hexagon shaped base for it to stick into, but go ahead. There we go. Make sure both eyes are facing forward. Make sure they look good from the side. Yeah. Okay, now we're ready to give this a slight coat of epoxy on the back and glue it into the head, or glue it into the shoulders like that. Okay, so the last bit of painting before I stick the head onto the shoulders was to redo some of the yellow dots. Now, I made the mistake the first time around of hitting every wart with yellow, and it just made them look too polka dotty. So I left a lot of them. I went back, repainted the green on top of it, and I only picked out a few here and there to a few of the bumps to make the actual yellow. The rest of them have a lighter green on it and some remnants of the last yellow coating, but I just was realizing that after looking at the feet, and which have very few isolated yellow dots on it, and the arms, which have no yellow dots on it, that the face was too spotty. And I went back and looked at the illustration, and the illustration has lots of yellow dots on it, but it doesn't have nearly as many bumps as this does. So I thought a good compromise would be to just not paint as many of them. But we're good to go on that. Last thing to do is to mix up one last batch of epoxy and epoxy the head to the body, and we will be ready for the final coatings. Yeah, the head is glued in, or epoxied in. We're going to let that set. And then we will come back and do the final finishes. Okay, we got almost finished Rat Fink here. He's got the flat coat on him, looks nice and dull with the exception of his eyes and his teeth and gums, which I have just painted with a clear pass of the Tamiya Clear. And I may put another coat over top of that after it has dried, just to make sure it's good and glossy. And I might even paint a white highlight on these eyes. I like the gloss is showing a natural light, a natural white highlight on them. But if it turns out that that's not enough, I can always paint one on there. I do kind of like the natural look, but as you can tell, this is what we're going for. The gums and teeth and maybe a little bit of drool on the lip, I'm painting with clear. I don't know if I want to try to get too cutesy and try to do like an epoxy, like a long bit of spittle. I think that might be just gilding the lily at this point. But yeah, that's it. I think we are one done rat here. And there you go, the finished Rat Fink next to the illustration. I think that it is a fairly faithful representation, all things considered. I got the glossing in on the eyes and on the teeth. Nice little quick 3-day diversionary, get the gray starship hulls out of my system build. Well, what else can you say other than this is a face only a mother could love? The Rat Fink. Ooh, Rat Fink in 3D. Ooh. Anybody who's drawn a cartoon character, and I don't know how many of you people out here that have done that, but a little known fact, my degree is in cartooning. And the hardest thing to do in a cartoon when you're creating a character was doing what they call turnarounds, which is basically you look at the character from the front and from the 3/4 view and from the back and from the side. And getting the character to look good when you do a complete turnaround is a very difficult thing to do, because most cartoonists have a tendency to draw their character from one specific angle and use that design most of the time. Even Mickey Mouse, you either see the front on or you see a side on, because those ears have to flop around whenever he turns his head. So that's why this, I think, is a very successful kit, a very successful model, is that, Rat Fink is normally drawn like this. That's the normal Rat Fink mode. Or you see a still pose of them. It's drawn specifically for that pose. Very rarely do you see the opportunity to see how it looks in all of the 3 dimensions, and getting it to look good in all 3 dimensions is a bit of a trick. This is probably the pose that you would be more likely to see, or you would see something like this. You wouldn't necessarily see him dead on, or any of these weird angles that really show off how distorted that bottom jowl is. But that's why what makes this a successful 3D model is I think that it captured it from every angle of view. And that's going to do it for our friend the Rat Fink, who just fell over. It was a quick little 3-day diversion, get me away from the gray starships for a while. We'll be back on the gray starships starting next week. So until then, be good to yourself, be good to each other, be safe, be healthy, be back next time.